The storm had been raging for 3 days, a relentless white beast swallowing roads, fences, and hope itself, when Mary Caldwell stumbled through the frozen wilderness, her breath coming in shallow, trembling gasps as snowflakes clung to her lashes like tiny daggers. She was a widow, 6 months pregnant, her swollen belly hidden beneath a torn coat that once belonged to her late husband, a miner who had died beneath a collapsing shaft, leaving her with nothing but grief, debt, and whispers of blame from a town that no longer wanted her. Cast out after refusing to sell her land to ruthless businessmen, Mary had been forced to flee when hired men burned her home to the ground, her cries swallowed by crackling flames and uncaring laughter. Now, each step through the snow felt heavier than the last, her boots soaked, her legs shaking, the cold creeping into her bones like a slow poison, while memories haunted her mind. The gentle way her husband had promised they'd raise their child, the soft flutter she felt in her womb, the tiny heartbeat that gave her the last reason to live. The storm roared louder, the wind clawing at her like a predator, and when she tripped over a buried root and crashed into the snow, the impact knocked the breath from her lungs as pain shot through her abdomen, making her gasp in terror for the unborn child she refused to abandon. Exhaustion wrapped around her like chains, whispering that it was easier to sleep, easier to let go, easier to fade into the endless white. And as her vision blurred and darkness crept in, she murmured to her child, promising they would survive, promising she would not let the world take another piece of her heart. Somewhere in the distance, the faint sound of hoofbeats cut through the storm, slow, deliberate, carrying the weight of a man who had long since learned not to care, Jack Mercer, a lonely outlaw with blood on his past and regret carved into his soul, riding through the storm with no destination, no family, and no reason to keep living except habit and guilt. He nearly rode past her, assuming she was another frozen corpse claimed by winter, but something made him stop, perhaps the faint tremor of her breath, perhaps the quiet whimper that echoed through the wind, perhaps the memory of someone he once failed to save. Dismounting with a sigh, Jack knelt beside her, brushing snow from her pale face and noticing the curve of her belly beneath the frost-stiffened coat, his hardened heart cracking at the sight of a life struggling to endure. Lifting her carefully, he wrapped her in his own heavy cloak and carried her onto his horse, whispering that she wasn't allowed to die today, that fate had already taken enough from him. The ride to his remote cabin was long and treacherous, but he refused to slow, battling the storm as fiercely as he once battled enemies, and when they finally reached shelter, Jack laid her near the fire, thawing her frozen limbs with trembling hands that had once only known violence. As Mary stirred and whispered in fear, he assured her she was safe, though he wasn't sure he deserved to say it, and for the first time in years, the outlaw felt something unfamiliar stirring in his chest, responsibility, hope, and the fragile beginning of love reborn. If this story of survival, courage, and days passed as Mary recovered in Jack Mercer's isolated cabin, the fire crackling like a heartbeat against the silence of the frozen world outside, and though she awoke fearful and unsure, she soon realized that the man who had saved her was not the monster his reputation suggested but a broken soul haunted by his own sins. Jack spoke little at first, carrying water, chopping wood, cooking simple meals with clumsy determination, while Mary watched him with cautious gratitude, sensing the loneliness that wrapped around him like a shadow. She told him her story in fragments, her husband's death, the cruelty of the town, the men who burned her home, and the terror of being left to die with a child still growing inside her. And as she spoke, Jack's jaw tightened, rage flaring beneath his quiet exterior, because he knew all too well the darkness men could carry. In return, he revealed pieces of his past. Once a lawman who lost his family to bandits, he had hunted revenge until it consumed him, becoming the very outlaw he despised, drifting from place to place with no purpose but survival. Yet Mary's presence began to change him, her strength despite suffering, reminding him that life could still hold meaning beyond regret. As weeks passed, the storm outside softened, and inside the cabin something warmer grew, a bond formed through shared pain, quiet laughter, and the unspoken understanding that both of them were trying to outrun the ghosts of yesterday. When Mary went into early labor one storm-heavy night, Jack panicked yet refused to leave her side, guiding her through agony with surprising gentleness, gripping her hand as she screamed, prayed, and fought to bring new life into a cruel world. At dawn, the child's cry pierced the cold air, and as Jack stared at the newborn, a living symbol of second chances. Tears streamed down his hardened face, because for the first time he felt redeemed, useful, and alive. But peace never lasts long in stories like theirs, and when the men who had driven Mary away finally tracked her down, intent on finishing what they started, Jack faced them alone in the snow, standing between violence and the fragile family he never expected to have. The showdown was brutal and final, yet when it ended, Jack returned wounded but victorious, collapsing into Mary's arms as she wept in relief, realizing that love had grown where fear once lived. In the months that followed, the lonely outlaw became a devoted protector, the widowed mother found hope again, and their child grew surrounded by stories of courage, sacrifice, and redemption. A reminder that even the most broken hearts can learn to love again, if this emotional journey of survival, love, and rebirth touched you. Don't forget to like, share, and subscribe to the channel, because your support keeps these cinematic, heart-gripping stories alive and helps us create even more unforgettable tales.